Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. When I was in sixth grade, my sixth grade science teacher was giving an example one time of a chemical reaction and how when chemicals react, they don't necessarily behave like how the chemicals you started with behaved in. He had accidentally mixed ammonia and bleach while cleaning the bathroom on a Saturday, and the following week he came in to talk about it. And I decided I had to give that a try, and so I took a empty soda bottle and I put a few drops of ammonia, a few drops of bleach in the bottle, and I quickly put the cap back on before the toxic gas could leak out. But the entire bottle felt really tight after I had mixed it, and you could clearly see a gas bubbling out of it. And I threw the bottle into the trash without opening it. So somewhere in a landfill, there's probably still a soda bottle containing a toxic gas entombed in there for the last almost 30 years now, if you could believe it. It was one of my first chemistry experiments ever, and I felt really smart doing it for some reason, even though all I did was mix some ammonia and some bleach. One of my favorite chemistry, and I still love that experiment to this day, believe it or not. One of my favorite experiments when I finally learned chemistry was electrolysis. I used to love to electroplate everything we had around it. We would have house keys, car keys. I would always plate them in a layer of copper because that was the first thing I ever learned to do with electrolysis. Eventually, I graduated to making I used to love explosions, and I learned how to make this high-powered explosive oxidizer called sodium chlorate. And the way you make it is electrolysis of a saltwater solution, sodium chloride. And I wanted to do it really fast because it always took weeks to make a handful of this stuff, and then the explosion would last 10 seconds, right? What I would do is take a phone book and stuff it with sodium chloride, put it in the fireplace, light it on fire. Woof! The entire house would shake. And my mom was so upset at that. But weeks and weeks of making sodium chloride, and it was gone in 10 seconds. I decided I want to make it a little bit faster. So what I had done was I took a large bucket of salt water and went outside our front door, and I put the end of an extension cord in the salt water, and I plugged in the extension cord, and the reaction instantly went out of control. And it filled the front door area of our home with chlorine gas. And I could scarcely reach over to unplug the setup because it was making so much chlorine. I was coughing my guts out. I had to run to the basement to turn off the circuit breakers. It was that much chlorine. And when I got back, everything had been charred. And my dad was so upset when he found out what had happened. He took away all of the gear that I had in my room. He took away my chemistry books. I was reading his college chemistry textbooks. That's where I learned a lot of this stuff. You gotta remember, this is the early 2000s. There wasn't anything where you could press a button and watch a video of somebody doing a chemistry experiment from another planet, right? We didn't have that kind of technology just yet, right? I mean, you could maybe press a button and read some information, but maybe not video just yet, right? This is early 2000s, right? Eventually, I learned some physics as well, and I learned about how you can connect batteries in series to make a high voltage. I was going to college part time at this point, and we had this chemistry or physics lab. They would constantly throw out used batteries, but a lot of them still had a small amount of charge in them. Eventually, I collected thousands and thousands of batteries, and I painstakingly connected all of them in series, making thousands or even 10,000 volts. And I discovered if you shorted them out, they made an arc. And if you stared at the arc, it often would blind you for a couple seconds. It was making possibly UV or X-rays from the high voltage. And so they caused things in the room to glow as well. And so it also made a distinct odor, probably ozone from the electricity arcing through the air. And so oftentimes when I did this, batteries would also explode. I made a huge mess in our basement doing that. We had an unfinished basement that had concrete floors, and I caused a lot of explosions in the basement doing this kind of stuff. One time I had found a motorcycle battery that somebody had thrown out, And while working with it, I accidentally dropped a small wire and accidentally shorted the battery, and the whole thing started to smoke. And it was so hot I couldn't get the wire off of the battery, and I panicked. I ran around the house looking for a pair of scissors so I could cut the wire that was shorting out the battery. And by the time I got back, the battery had started to leak. And fun times with that. Um, I used to love explosions. Oh, another fun experiment. I still do. I love cleaning my ear with hydrogen peroxide, putting a couple drops of peroxide in my ear, it bubbles and the wax comes out. I would put 3% hydrogen peroxide. That's the strength that you find in the store. But I learned you can concentrate hydrogen peroxide by boiling it. So I had taken a bottle of 3% peroxide and I boiled the solution until I had roughly 30 or 50% peroxide solution. And I let it cool off, and then I put a couple drops in my ear, and wow, instantly everything just exploded in my ear, and I couldn't hear out of. I thought I had lost my hearing in one ear for good. It was such a loud explosion. Now, when I was in college, I befriended another chemistry student, and he had discovered how to extract gold from a recycled computer equipment. And he would dissolve the chips in acid and precipitate the gold out with a reducing agent. And he had all these chemicals in his apartment. I asked him, well, where do you buy all these chemicals, especially the hydrochloric acid, the nitric acid? And he said you could just buy it at Home Depot. And my first reaction, he and I both dated a girl who now worked part-time at the Home Depot, and I knew that. And so I went, and I didn't want to go into Home Depot and risk seeing her and arguing. We had feuded over her. I think neither of us were seeing her at this point now, but we had feuded over her. And so he said, "Oh, you could buy it at Home Depot." He said, "Oh yeah, yeah, go to Lowe's then. Lowe's sells it too." It gave me a nice, warm, fuzzy feeling that despite feuding with the girl, when we were working with chemistry, we could be on good terms again. It kind of reminds me of how the United States and the Soviet Union can feud over all sorts of stuff, but as soon as we're doing science together, we're all good again, right? It had that kind of feeling to it, right? Now, a few years ago, I was living in an apartment that had a borderline radon issue. It wasn't enough to be unsafe. It was below the unsafe threshold. But I discovered that the dust in our house collected a lot of radon decay products, polonium-210 and a few other radioisotopes. And I discovered how to extract the radioisotopes. What you do is you take this dust, which is mostly organic material, and you dissolve it in piranha solution, a mixture of sulfuric acid and hydrogen peroxide. And the piranha solution burned all the organic material, and it also dissolved the polonium. So now you're left with a solution of polonium, and then all you have to do is boil off the acid, and you get this really radioactive sludge. And it made the Geiger counter scream SOS. It would go beep 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 beep. And to this day, every time I see dust, I go to at the computer lab at the community college where I teach, and I see a lot of dust behind the computer. My first thought is beep 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 beep. I'll sometimes even sing it out loud to tell people about the dust. And anyways, I love these experiments. They're a good way for me to forget about the world around me. Right now, as I speak, I'm running into car repair issues, and sometimes I don't have all the right answers with my coworkers, with my roommates. But as soon as I do these science experiments, I forget about the entire world around me. I especially love the electrolysis. I still use that for my art projects nowadays, and it just brings me right back to when I first learned about it. This is the Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum.